Why are some intervals beautiful? I chose the word beautiful. It's a little bit of a trick question, but musical intervals play a crucial role in shaping the emotional and aesthetic experience in music. Some of you probably heard the word beautiful and said, well, how can you determine what's beautiful? And that's actually kind of the point. Some intervals are universally perceived as beautiful and consonant, while others are often considered dissonant or even unsettling. But why do these perceptions exist, and where do they come from? Are these associations learned, or do we have an innate reaction to certain combinations of sounds? The nature of intervals. Intervals can be classified into several types based on their size and quality. Perfect intervals, such as the unison, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, and perfect octave, are often described as stable and consonant. As we have learned, these intervals have simple frequency ratios, like 2:1 for the octave, 3:2 for the perfect fifth, which makes them sound stable and pleasing to the ear. In contrast, intervals like the minor second or the tritone have more complex ratios and are typically perceived as dissonant, with tension that creates movement and a need for resolution. If I play this, it feels like it wants to resolve. If I play this, it doesn't need to go anywhere. It feels very stable to our Western ears, at least. An experiment. Play a perfect fifth by holding down C and G on the piano. C will be the lower note. Listen to how it doesn't feel like it needs to go anywhere. Where would it resolve? Hard to say, there's more than one option, and it doesn't really feel like it has to resolve. Now hold down an E as a lower note and a C. This one has a stronger desire to move. If you resolve the C up here to a B, it becomes the more stable perfect fifth. And it feels like we resolved a little bit. Now let's try playing an E and an F. This one clashes and it really feels disturbing if you listen to it for too long. But if you resolve it, the tension gets resolved too. And really, that's what music is, especially classical music. It's this interplay between tension and relaxation. We're always waiting for the resolution. Historical and cultural perspectives. The perception of intervals has deep historical roots. Ancient Greek philosophers like Pythagoras linked musical intervals with mathematical ratios and cosmic order. The Pythagorean tuning system, based on these ratios, influenced Western music theory for centuries. However, not all cultures perceive intervals in the same way. For example, the Jumane people of the Bolivian rainforest, who have had little exposure to Western music, do not perceive the similarity between notes an octave apart. So something like this. This suggests that some aspects of interval perception are culturally learned. Psychologically, intervals evoke different emotional responses. Perfect intervals are often associated with feelings of stability and resolution, while dissonant intervals can create tension and a sense of unease. Stability, tension. This is partially due to the way our auditory system processes sound. Dissonant intervals produce beats or roughness in the sound wave, which can be perceived as unpleasant. However, studies have shown that this aversion to roughness might be universal, but the conscious appraisal of intervals is influenced by cultural context. The debate over whether our reactions to musical intervals are learned or innate is ongoing. Some researchers argue that there is a biological predisposition to favor certain intervals due to their simple frequency ratios. Others suggest that our musical preferences are largely shaped by cultural exposure and learning. For instance, Western listeners are accustomed to the equal temperament tuning system, which divides the octave into 12 equal parts, making certain intervals more familiar and acceptable. The perception of musical intervals as beautiful or dissonant is a complex interplay of acoustic properties, psychological responses, and cultural influences. While there may be some innate tendencies in how we perceive sound, much of our reaction to musical intervals is shaped by the musical traditions and experiences we are exposed to. Understanding these factors can deepen our appreciation of music and its emotional impact. The grandfather clock that keeps interrupting our sessions. Those are all consonant intervals. Notice no dissonant intervals were used. We'll talk more about that at a later point too. Let's talk about the Westminster chimes, aka the grandfather clock that keeps interrupting our lessons. So it goes something like this, starting on A. Those are all consonant intervals. So first we have A down to F. Then we have, that's a major third. It's a consonant interval. Then we have G down to C. Then we go back from C up to G. And then back to A. And then down to F again. Then we go back to A. Down to G. Down to F. Part of a major scale. Going down to C. And then we have a major 6. And it comes back to the F. So this piece is actually in F major. This is something we'll learn about much later, but all the intervals that you keep hearing in the grandfather clock are consonant intervals, and they were chosen for their calming effect. Notice no dissonant intervals were used. So it's a very Western idea, but a lot of cultures also lean towards these consonant intervals. So that's something that we can just think about and pay attention to as we listen to music and try and determine if that's necessary, if that's universal, if it appeals to us, if it appeals to others. We can think about some of these bigger questions as we keep going through the course.